What are the clear evidences of feudalism? Who is a citizen? A citizen is a person protected by law within a state. He bears responsibilities and he has obligations, but he also has rights. But the most important marker of citizenship is that he is a subject of law. He is governed by law, but he is also protected by law. If you're an American citizen were to die, an inquest will be demanded. You cannot be buried without an autopsy if it was in a violent environment or situation. He is a law-protected individual. And because of the protections of the law, account must always be given for his life. But in Nigeria, by public acknowledgement and judicial confirmation, 430 Shia Muslims were murdered by Buratai's security detail in Zaria. If they were citizens, somebody would have had to account for their death, their killing, the murder, but nobody ever accounted. It's very easy, quite easy to point at Buratai, especially since most of us don't even like Buhari. I never liked him. But let's talk about a model of democratic governance, General Olusegun Obasanjo. Within a year of his installation in office, the OD accident happened. OD accident, euphemism for OD murders. By government acknowledgement, 40 persons died. And I must note, they added the qualifier, only 40 persons died. But in reality, over 2,000 Nigerians were murdered in OD. Over 2,000 by the Nigerian state. A state that is not governed by law, that is above its citizen. The entire machinery of the state is directed towards regime protection and preservation, not citizens' preservation or protection. That is why you can find the president's son having enough soldiers to take over Republic of Benin when they can't even spare some for Yelawata. That is a feudal state. That clearly is a feudal state. The Nigerian feudal state grew during the years of the military interregnum, was more or less calcified by the time the military were the ones who are giving us constitutions. So we moved from military dictatorship to civilian dictatorship, and it has always taken the temperament of the occupiers of the office to reveal exactly what we are. What we have become, and what should be evident to each and every one of us by now, is that Nigeria has become a feudal state where the rulers have no respect, regard for those they are ruling. If you doubt it, let me show you. And that's why the Hanlon Razor example is very important. There are times when you must look beyond stupidity to explain the malicious actions of persons. The Nigerian state is unapologetically feudal. Citizens, quote and unquote, would be seized by terrorists credibly attributed to the government. Terrorists allegedly imported into the country by the persons occupying the highest level of governance in Nigeria today. They would abduct victims And you would hear presidential spokespersons talking about phone calls instead of, they'll be telling you kinetic, non-kinetic, making excuses for the misery of those they rule. You have almost 30 million, and I've been advised that this is what it is. You have over 30 million Nigerian children strolling on the street, no school, no education, nothing. This does not occupy the mind or attention of those who purport to rule the country, but they are able to borrow money to send people to Hajj. Think about that. They can borrow money to send people to Hajj, something that is meant to be voluntary if you can afford it. A government that is constitutionally charged to educate its citizens, victims, would borrow money to send people to Mecca, but they cannot borrow money to build schools. In Lagos State, remember, this is the fourth largest economy in Africa, Lagos State. Forget the rest of Nigeria. Lagos State is unable to provide adequate educational facilities to the residents of the state. These are not things you blame on stupidity. These are deliberate and intentional. So the question is it born of malice? No, it's not malice, it's business. If you are educated, you become a threat to the system. So it has nothing to do with malice. It's not malice, and it's not stupidity, it's deliberate. Obasanjo and Atiku spent $16 billion, not naira, dollars, $16 billion on electricity, and this country is still in darkness. Nobody is in prison on account of it. Nobody. And you think that is born of stupidity? Malice, yes, but the malice is intentional, it's designed to achieve something. You are meant to stay poor, because if you are constantly fighting to survive, you are not likely to demand more. That is a feudal state. It weaponizes poverty, it weaponizes ignorance, and you see the worst effect of religion in feudal states. Feudal states control the religious establishment. How is Nigeria any different? You find pastors confessing to things that will make a carnal person like me blush. Even I will be scared to admit to half of the things that you hear your pastors boasting about. You see a pastor open his gob to tell you that Saul must come before David. They are admitting to the evil that they are endorsing, but they are explaining why that evil must come first. It's not isolated. All of them. You hear Gumi excusing evil, bringing false moral equivalencies. So the freedom fighters of IPOB are the same as the Fulani terrorists and kidnappers. Those who are demanding a separate state peacefully are the same as terrorists. Nnamdi Kanu was convicted of incitement, not actual terrorism, incitement to terrorism. Why is Gumi not sat in a jail cell somewhere today for excusing, inciting, explaining, rationalizing terrorism? Why? Look, in feudal states, One of the first things that you must understand that happens is that all the powers of the state are fused in the feudal lord. On his mandate, they have stood. Judges are singing it. On his mandate, they are standing. They are singing it in your Congress of Baboons. What you have as senators who say they are children of your first lady. You heard Wike by his own mouth admitting to how he compromised the judiciary in relation to the Osun local government funds. It had been whispered multiple times about how Wike stands in the forefront of the corruption of the Nigerian judiciary. But he himself came out into the open space to acknowledge, admit, and flaunt it in his feud with the Osun State person. And we are all still sat, lying to ourselves that we are a democracy. A democracy where not only are your choices constrained, let me show you one. The Supreme Court delivered a judgment that essentially said that Abure's term as the chairman of the Labour Party had come to an end. And then Nenadi Usman went multiple times. I think Peter Obi also went to INEC. INEC refused to implement the judgment. But when Peter Obi crossed to ADC, INEC recovered his senses and then stopped recognizing Abure. Where is the judiciary? In the pocket of those on whose mandate, stolen mandate, they're standing. That is where the judiciary is. In a feudal state, when the feudal lord does not get what he wants, he takes it anyway. So in spite of the fact that the legislative arm will do exactly as it is told most of the times by those who have ruined Nigeria, it still wasn't enough. They took one legislation before the parliament. They didn't get all the things they wanted in that legislation. They wrote one for themselves. Anyway, forgery is a way of life. Forgery that is forced on them because what should be absolute control of the legislature for some reason was not completely absolute. So now they had to write one for themselves. Me and you, we lie to ourselves that it is the aggregation of our sovereignty that form the state. Between your tax authorities and Bulaba, they've taken that sovereignty and handed it to France. Everybody is running away from France. They had to forge a legislation in order to hand our tax revenue to France. In a feudal state, accountability does not matter. It is the political convenience of the rulers that matter. So even though we're in an environment where we are being told that because the government requires our taxes before it could do many things, we should also look away whilst it does a lot of things. Well, let me ask a question. Who pays for the criminalities that have been used as justification for the hardship that are being forced on the Nigerian people? Subsidy is gone. Subsidy is gone because of multiple scams in the subsidy regime. Who has paid for these crimes? How many people have paid for the billions that were stolen under the subsidy regime? How many people? I was in prison with persons who stole goats. There were persons in the cell with me who stole yam. Where are the persons who stole the Commonwealth and forced all of us to have to swallow the bitter pill of subsidy is gone.